Man, thanks for coming on here. It's good to talk to you again. Hadn't
Yeah,
seen you in a while, but
yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. So what? How long have you been doing the podcast?
so I started doing it. I started doing it with my friends in January, and or can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
I didn't know. Okay, yeah, I started doing it with my friends in January, and we had been doing a bunch in person. I think this is like the eighth one I've recorded, and so yeah, I wanted to start doing a lot of Zooms to try and branch out because it's hard to get people in the building,
Sure,
and
sure.
outside of town especially. But yeah, man, congrats on the album. Probably I was really impressed with like I'm sure you know this, like a lot of albums you listen to, you don't enjoy like each song, but I really found myself, you know, liking each song almost as much as the singles. Like I probably Medicine is my favorite.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
And yeah. So yeah, tell me about making the album, and you can talk about that or your journey to where you are now, whatever you want to start with. But I'm sure we have a lot to unpack.
Yeah. Well, I guess like maybe would it be best to kind of speak about like the lead up into being into the like the lead up into being able to make the album. Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah. So um, my musical journey, I've been writing songs since I was 14, so I guess that's coming up on 13 years now. And but I would say I was only able to make a serious start make excuse me start making a serious hustle out of it. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather. I've had some teeth removed about a few days ago.
Oh
But
no.
yeah, the yeah, I started seriously trying to make a hustle out of music sometime around late 2018 when I moved back from Nashville to the Brevard area. And when I got here, I sort of tried to um, kind of take what I had learned in Nashville as far as just the work ethic and the hustle of the whole scene there. I tried to implement it into what I did locally here. And so right off the bat in moving here, I immediately kind of put out a Craigslist ad for various instruments, various musicians to include in my set. And so, I was looking for a bass player, a drummer, a keys player, a fiddle player. And that was the original lineup. These days, instead of a fiddle player, my primary bandmate is a guy named Ryan Stigman, who plays just about anything you put in front of him, but he's sort of my main sideman at this point. He does mostly lap steel and mostly pedal steel in the band, and then does some acoustic guitar and various other things. But anyway, yeah. So for all of 2019, I was taking various musicians kind of on the road with me. And we were mostly doing brewery gigs because that was the primary way of making money as a musician, at least in my immediate area, that didn't involve having, it has a somewhat built-in crowd. The brewery doesn't necessarily expect you to bring, hordes of people. It has a guarantee just about all the time, as long as you're able to play a certain amount of time. And so we put together a 3-hour set, which was kind of our shtick for all of 2019. And so in 2019, I took on about 120 shows.
Sheesh.
Yeah, which I'm very, I'm proud of that number. I'm happy that I did that. And I had some help on the booking end too. I had a friend who was an old friend who I had hired to be my booking agent, who had previously made a bit, his primary hustle was playing breweries. And so he helped get dates on the books. And so, in the process of doing all these shows, relative to my experience in the past, we had sort of kind of created these road calluses that you kind of need to be able to hit the road for that long. So, we got our sea legs, so to speak, doing the shows. then in late 2019, you know, I did this one show that sort of kind of set me on the course that I am now, which is I played at a performance series that Raleigh hosts called I think it's called First Night Friday. It's like there's a bunch of shows going all over Raleigh, and I happened to be opening for a band called New Reverie or New Reveille. I forget how to say their name. Some of their bandmates, one of their bandmates is an acquaintance of mine, and or a few of them are actually. They've since disbanded, but anyway, I go and open for them at this church. That's this. I forget the name of the church, but it's this big, church downtown Raleigh. That's just an awesome room to perform in. It's got awesome acoustics, and their label happens to be there. And so their label is, the label that they worked with, I forget their previous name. They've since reformed under a new entity, but like that label would go on to be Carry On Music, which is, Carry On Music is who I've put this new record out with. I'm associated with them on the management end and on the publishing end as well. And so playing that show seemed to, they liked what I did.
Was it just you or the full band?
This one was actually just me.
Okay.
I have a background in, I'm used to performing in or I wouldn't say I'm that used to performing in big performance halls, but it's not necessarily like a completely strange thing to me. Just because before doing contemporary music, I had somewhat of a background in classical singing. So I love singing in churches. I love it. And they liked the show. Nothing really came of it. We did the show. A dialogue about a record deal didn't start at that moment. However, in the early months of 2020, before the pandemic happened, I was still doing shows, and Amy Lipsky, who's now my manager, had been coming to my shows, and I knew I had recognized her. I didn't know where I recognized her from, but she kept coming to my shows in Raleigh, and eventually approached me one night and asked she asked sometime, I think in January or February, again, before the pandemic happened, hey, do you have any management? Do you have any deals in place? And at the time, I had tentative management. I mean, we had a verbal agreement. We weren't really getting much. Nothing had really started to click with the management that I had at the time. And so I said, yeah, I do have management. But I'm not in any rush to make any grand commitments because not much has been clicking on that end.
She works for the label that you're currently signed with. Okay. But did you not know that, or?
So I couldn't remember at the time. I couldn't remember where I had seen her at a show, and she had kept coming to shows that I was doing after that performance at the church, but I couldn't quite place where I had seen her before, and so she had approached me, and I didn't know that she worked in the music industry, and so we kind of talked things out after the show that night, and so she was like, okay, well, she said, like, don't be making any, please don't make, like, we may have an offer for you sometime in the coming months. And I said, awesome, that's great. Yeah, I'm not in any rush to like making any sort of big deal or make any sort of commitment to the operation that I have now, because not much is really clicking. So pandemic hits, and then opportunities dry up pretty quickly. And so, as any musician is, I'm kind of like, at the time, I'm sort of like having like an existential crisis, because like everything I've worked for has just evaporated, and it was like hard earned. It wasn't much progress, but it was very hard earned. But sure enough, sometime around March or April, she and her father, whose name's Tom Lipsky, he's the label executive at Carry On, they approach me again and they say, hey, we have an offer for you. And so I drive out to Raleigh in the pandemic, and we talk, from a distance about just like an opportunity that they have on their plate, which is so to kind of backtrack a little bit, they weren't Carry On Music before. They had a different label that eventually they reformed as Carry On Music. And so they said, hey, we're starting a new operation. It's management, it's label, and it's publishing. And we want to give you the first offer to be associated with us at all three levels. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is like an awesome opportunity. This is much bigger. This is the first lead I've ever had. And so sometime in April or May, we signed the record deal. It might have even been June, but I and at that point, that's like the first time I've ever had to hire an entertainment lawyer, because when you get these contracts for this sort of thing, you don't really know. You get a contract, you can't make heads or tails of that thing. So now, since then, I've had to. I've been working with a guy named Paul Summerstein, who's a great legal aid. So
how'd you track them down?
What now?
How'd you get where'd you find the lawyer?
I knew, so like I'm good friends with a band called the Nude Party, and they're kind of in their sort of upward trajectory with their career, pandemic not included. They're like, they're on their way, and they're kind of like, they're transitioning from being like they're transitioning into being a club act, a band that can solidly sell out like, medium, small venues. And so like, I asked them because they, it looked like with this opportunity, I was like, oh, it looks like I have the opportunity to transition. I bet they know a lawyer who's kind of affordable at the place I'm at, but also has an in-depth knowledge of the nature of an independent record deal, which Paul very much so does. And so I contacted Paul, and he helped me work through those deals, and then we signed everything away. And then initially on the label end, we were at first trying to cut an EP. Rose Songs wasn't originally supposed to be an album. We were going to cut. In fact, we weren't even sure it was going to necessarily be an EP. The nature of the deal left it very open-ended, so that they could do 6 singles if they wanted, or they could do, they could do singles if they wanted, or they could do an EP if they wanted, which either way I was going to be happy with. But we kind of expedited that process straight to an album, just because in the Americana world and in the roots world, I don't know if it's unique to Americana, but it kind of, it's more unique to Americana than, say, hip hop or top 40, that you're sort of expected, when you're making your debut as an artist, you're sort of expected to come out the door swinging with an album. You can make an EP, but there's a lot of radio stations that really, at the very minimum, need an EP to consider spinning you. Case in point, I used to submit tracks to my local station, WNCW, and they said things like, well, we like the track, but we really don't play singles that aren't a part of a bigger release. And so that's something, and that's to my knowledge, kind of a common phenomenon. I could be wrong about that, but it's seemingly, from what I've talked to Tom about, that seems like that's a consistent thing for a lot of Americana stations across the country. And so at that point, we okay, we're going to do a full album. And also, they just felt confident that the content was there. I mean, I think I'm lucky in that, we were considering songs, that I had sort of collected over the course of, more or less 7 years. Some of the songs, there's at least one song on this album that I wrote when I was 19 years old. And so like,
Are you 26 now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we had a collection of songs to work with from just a long stint of time, whereas, by the time an artist is cutting their second or third record, usually they're only considering songs that they've written in between. I mean, not all the time, but like sometimes they're only considering songs that were written within a short span of time. But for the purpose of a debut album, we're considering songs that from a very long span of time. And so we were luckily in a position to pick songs that, you know, we felt really good about. And frankly, if we cut another album right now, I still have another 10 songs that I feel like would be strong contenders. I'm proud of the fact with this album that I don't think I put any filler songs on it. I think I put, and I appreciate the compliment you gave earlier. I wanted every single song to be like a substantial song that in itself could be a single if somebody, you know, if it could be the single if you know, and I think that's the goal for everybody, but you know, how well we execute that, you know, that's up for everyone else to determine. But anyway, so we go to, you know, we set course to record the songs. Initially found a producer I chose, didn't pan out just for business reasons. But then eventually the label suggests that we work with a producer they had worked with in the past named Ben Fowler, who most famously has done like a bunch of engineering sessions for Ben has engineered some like records for Eric Clapton and Michael McDonald. So he's been around the block. He's been doing serious records for a long time. You know, Ben and I talk it out. We get to know each other. At the time of kind of picking a producer, I'm mostly preoccupied with if it's going to be a collaborative experience or not. I'm not very interested in working with producers that sort of, you know, like kind of take control of the entire creative vision. And I fully respect those. There are many producers and many people have made some great records with some producers that are not, you know, that aren't necessarily interested in a deeply collaborative experience, but that's not what I'm interested in. I kind of, with this being my debut and with me being at the age that I'm at, I kind of know what my sound is. And so, so Ben and I, or, you know, at least for now, it'll probably evolve at some point. Ben and I kind of talk it out. We get a sense of who we're getting, and you know, we get a sense of like what kind of record we're making, and then you know the prospect of who's playing on it and where we're recording is, you know, starts coming up. And so like when, like, you know, I'm very blessed. Like the liner notes on this record are very, you know, it's such a, you know, my first album I recorded under a pizza shop. And, you know, on this album, we cut it at Ocean Way Studios in Nashville, which is a great studio. We didn't pull any punches as far as the session players. You know, Brian Sutton played acoustic guitar for it. Danny Dugmore played lap steel and pedal steel for it. He crushed it. There's just like, there's some old, or not old, but there's some legendary session talent that's on the record, and I'm very, very happy about that, very proud about that. So we cut the first couple singles like around June and October.
Wait, can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
Okay, just backtrack a little. So you've written songs like your whole life. You said one like was on there. You're 19. Who do you show the songs to? Or like, are you like, okay, I have like, here's like 30 songs, and are you like demoing them to someone, and then they're like, okay, this one like Medicine's good, like The Drifter's good, like, or
yeah, good question. So with this record, it was sort of a discussion with, you know, in the future, I want to make records where it's like a curated thing where like I have a very specific vision of like what kind of flavor I'm trying to make on a record. I would say with this record, the goal was mostly just to put like a lot of my best songs out. And I still feel like, there's a lot of my best songs that have yet to be recorded. Um, but that was mostly a dialogue with Ben and with Tom, the label exec, just about which songs we all felt best about and which ones we thought, felt good. I initially with this being my first go round working on a major record and working on a well-funded record, I should say. I didn't really want to get too, I really wanted to lean on the intuitions of the people I was working with. I didn't want to get too, I have feelings about certain things, but I didn't want to have when your nose is this close to your own songs, you can't really see the big picture. And so I didn't want to sort of be overly opinionated, at least not initially, about which songs got recorded. A lot of my favorite songs of my own did get recorded. We did Medicine is definitely one of my favorite recordings on the record. I mean, I love them all, but Medicine was one of the most fun ones to record.
Wait, so did you have to physically in person play them for the execs, and then they're like, okay, we like this and this? Is that how it goes down?
Well, I actually put together I put together a demo sheet on Drive that's got just the various varying levels of quality of recordings from over the years. Some of them were legitimate, or I wouldn't say legitimate, but some of them were decent recordings. Some of them were off of my last album that I put out myself. And then others were just kind of cell phone recordings of the band playing together. And so the demos were the demo, Tom and Ben kind of listened through my demo sheet, which had all these recordings, and sort of just kind of gave me their feedback on which ones they liked the most. And there were certain ones where I was like, we need to get that song on this record really, really badly. But yeah, so they looked through the demo sheet, and then we kind of just talked it over from there, as far as which songs we wanted to consider for the record. And yeah, so that's kind of what that process was. There wasn't any moment where I was playing these songs for them acoustically in front of them. The closest approximation I have to that, or the closest experience I have to that is when I was playing the songs for the session players who were going to play on the record. That's when some of those songs I was just sitting in there in the control room just playing for them acoustically, and Brian would chart the song out and then go, I would play it for them one time. Brian would be charting it as I'm playing it for him, and then he would step into the next room and then print off copies for everyone to have. And so there wasn't any time when he never asked me to replay a song. He just would be, and they would be talking through, it's not that they were disinterested, but they would be talking through me playing this song in front of them. And they would remember everything about it. So that's just kind of the craziness of the kind of work, just when you work with session people like that. I mean, previously I had only had the experience of working with my friends, so I'm kind of used to a certain things taking a long time for them to learn. And there were times when I was like, okay, now remember this. And they would kind of just laugh at me, yeah, of course we're going to remember that. And it's, I was just, that whole world of immediately knowing exactly what to do for a song the moment you hear it is totally new and very exciting thing to hear for the first time, especially when you're in the control room singing. Just hearing the band play it almost perfectly the first time they've ever played the song. So yeah, pretty wild.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then when the one other thought I had, then you can continue with the timeline. So they take you to Nashville, did they put you up in a hotel and stuff, or that's so cool?
Yeah, that's kind of I mean, I've been renting Airbnbs for myself in the past,
Yeah.
kind of doing you can find some good Airbnbs for $45 for 3 people. You can also find that $45 is about the threshold. Once you start dipping below that, it gets a little squirrely. I could write a book on weird Airbnb experiences at that price point. But luckily, yeah, they're, the labels, usually, or I say usually, every time I needed to go to Nashville to work on something, they're gracious enough to help me out as far as putting me up in a room. But yeah, like kind of, well, and also the other thing to know about this too, man, is like doing all of this in the middle of a pandemic when Nashville is essentially dead, or not, just dead as far as like people walking around. It's not nearly as lively as it was when I was living there. And so it's like kind of like, and where I'm sitting in a control room, with like some badass players and a badass producer, and we're all wearing masks, and I'm just kind of like, wow, this is such a surreal experience. I'll never forget this. So yeah, I mean, we cut the record in a pretty short amount of time. We do all of the main, we did about 80% of the tracking. The bulk of the tracking was done between drums, bass, piano, organ, Brian doing mostly like acoustic guitar stuff, some overdubs, and then Danny switching between lap steel and pedal steel. And then we did late, in the months to come, we did some overdubs. I would drive back to Nashville to take care of some overdubs and stuff like that. Or rather,
so you only
mostly
sang?
just sorry, what now?
You didn't play like acoustic, like at all?
I did and I didn't. What's the funny thing about it? There was one track that I played acoustic guitar on. I played acoustic guitar on Broken Horns. What's kind of funny about this is that, so Brian, in the process of kind of getting to know my label and getting to know the people I work with, there's like, I'm very used to playing guitar on my own songs, which, that's what I do. But I think we kind of started from this assumption that I should be focusing my energy on the singing. And so Brian plays the lion's share of the acoustic guitar on the record. However, my playing style is a little idiosyncratic in that it's, I'm a self-taught guitar player. And so like a lot of these recordings are sort of Brian's immediate impression, because, you're in the studio, time is money. And so like a lot of these recordings are Brian's immediate impression of what my guitar playing sounds like. And so Brian's playing on the record, he's playing the acoustic guitar parts. Some of the songs, it's very much so his part. Like his part for Annabelle is not my part. His part for Nothing Left to Say is most essentially my part that I wrote for it. It's just kind of a song by song basis. He kind of just took what he could, he took what in the limited time that we had, he took what he could do on the spot. And for the most part, did it exactly right. Or I say for the most part, he essentially at every turn did it, did something better, because he's a better, he's Brian Sutton. He's going to play, he freaking knows guitar. And so like, yeah, so like, but the gist of how the guitar went down is like, I'd be like, okay, here's my part, Brian, and Brian would go in and he would play that part and kind of just vamp it up a little bit, kind of add his own contributions. And so I'm not playing guitar on the record except for Broken Horns. I don't know. And then, yeah, but so we overdubbed a lot of things. We overdubbed the banjo, some of the lead guitar work. The lead guitar work on Medicine was done after the fact. The banjo stuff for Amarillo was done after the fact. The mandolin work was done after the fact, and the violin or the fiddle work was all done after the fact. So and then eventually put it together and started getting ready for the release process. So yeah, we finished recording it sometime around December. Like that's around the time I got my masters back, and I had heard the songs in their final form and was very happy with them.
Hmm. What are your? I remember we talked on the phone a few months ago. You were telling me how your parents have been a big, support and just great base for you. What have they thought about everything and like getting signed and the new album? How do they like everything?
They're very proud. They're like, I'm fortunate to have, my parents believe in what I'm doing, which not a lot of, aspiring musicians can say that. And I've always, really appreciated that. Yeah, my dad's very, very, very proud. And, so is my mom. And, they, yeah, it's, yeah, I'm just blessed to have that connection, because I don't think I would have made it work. I mean, it at some level is still, it remains to be seen as to whether or not I'll make it work. But but even with the momentum I have now, I would not have had that momentum without their support. So
So do you feel like, do you have a, sorry if this is like a personal question, but do you have like steady income from, like, do you get paid? Like, are you like on salary, or how does?
I'm a right now I'm kind of living well. In a few weeks I'll be living off of my publishing advance. I do some part-time work, working for a flower shop in Brevard, kind of doing weddings and doing like cleanups. Like I clean up all the flowers after a wedding is when a wedding is over. And that's just kind of supplemental income, something to it's not something I'll do forever, or at least something I don't want to do forever. I love doing it, but
Mm,
music's the main aspiration. But um, but yeah, I'm if I could say I'm a full-time musician, and that I like, if I had to live off of income from music, I could make that would be functionally working. That would work out fine. But yeah.
so it is like how well your stuff performs, or like say like they, or obviously to an extent like it's still going to do well because they're putting it on playlists, but say like it didn't do very well at all, then would they not pay you as much as?
Yeah, well, so the way that kind of works, like, you know, um, with indie deals, especially for new artists, you're kind of lucky. You're kind of lucky to just get what advances that you get. A lot of people don't get advances. With initial indie deals, like luckily with Carry On, they're gracious enough to kick me a rel you know relatively like a pretty good advance to keep me afloat until things start clicking. But it is like an advance against earnings. And so like in a publishing sense, a lot of the time what you'll do is you'll get, well, publishing deals can go down a variety of ways, but some people get like a monthly stipend it's all in advance against earnings. So they're basically, what they're doing is they're alleviating the existential threat of like, something not clicking immediately for you in exchange for on a commission on the back end for once something does click for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how it works on the record end as well. It's different. Like on the record end, the publishing end, there's it's a little bit cleaner of a process because there's no overhead. There's like the overhead from like recording the songs is all taken care of on the record end. And so like the publishing is it's a pretty clean and simple process. They either land it in a commercial or a TV show, or they don't. And then, you split after, you get a split after that. And then there's, on the publishing end, part of the commissionable income there is just like from your streams and plays. So it's all pretty clean. On the record end, there's just like, to put together a professional record, there's just such an enormous overhead as far as how much money you're putting into that. And so that's a much bigger gamble from what I can tell. But I'm trying to remember your original question. Sorry. Like,
No, it's all right. I think you pretty much answered it. It was just about, I just wanted to talk about the money a little bit.
yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you'll like with indie deals, like,
So wait,
you
explain
get
what
like,
an indie deal is, because I don't even really.
well, the distinction that I'm making there is like, with a major label deal. Okay. So here's an example. Lil Pump, prior to signing no, yeah, that's a funny thing to bring up, but we're just talking big money here.
Yeah.
Lil Pump, to my knowledge, got an $8 million record advance. It might not have even
Woo!
been an advance. Yeah. And so that's money paid up front
Like
off the
before he
top
was
from,
like famous at all.
no, well, no, that's not. See,
Oh,
he
okay,
was definitely
okay.
famous at that. Okay, well, actually, I'm going to give you a quick and dirty version of this story. So Lil Pump signed a deal before he was 18, and signed it without any parental signature. So he was actually able to, his lawyer was able to get him out. Like, keep in mind, he's signed a deal. He's becoming famous. He becomes famous. His lawyer actually is able to like get him out of that arrangement because he signed it without a cosigner of some sort of parent. And so at that point, labels are scrambling. I don't know how many. I think it could have just been Warner, I think, or whoever he's signed with.
Wait,
They're
hold
trying
on.
to,
Whoever did that is pretty dumb. That was like the first thing I learned in my business legal class was,
yeah.
or not
Oh,
the first
yeah.
thing, but on contracts, it's like if you're under 18 and that's not going to hold up. But yeah, sorry,
Exactly.
keep going.
Totally. Yeah, it did. And so it didn't hold up. And so
Uh,
I think the label that he was with turned around and then offered him an $8 million advance upon turning, I don't know if he had turned 18 or if it was like the advance, it was like a co-sign advance, like he still needed to co-sign for it. But like, so like artists used to get these pretty big, I mean, some of them still do, Taylor Swift still does, but like pretty sizable record advances, which is just like it's considered money to live off of until the record is profitable. In the music that we do, people like Ray LaMontagne back in the day used to get considerable chunks of money. These days, like on the record end, there's just simply not nearly as much physical product being sold as there used to be. I mean, I'd say the portion of the pie is a lot. The portion itself is a lot bigger for Americana artists because there's a lot of music listeners that like vinyl, but like it's the streaming age, and there's only so many people that are absolutely crushing it. And so like, the overhead of recording is a lot smaller than it's ever been, but also, the profit margin is a lot smaller than it's ever been, at least, from on the record end. It's expected that we make our living touring. And then I'm trying to remember specifically why. Oh, right. So the distinction between that and an indie deal is just that, like, with what you sign with an independent label, their resources aren't going to be the same resources as Warner Brothers. Now, their attention to you as an individual could be considerably higher. And in fact, like, I'm perfectly content with the amount of attention I get from my label, and I think they're wonderful, and that, like, I think they're absolutely wonderful in that way. And when you sign with a major label, if you're not one of their cash cows, you may not get the attention that you really want. And so an indie deal can be a lot better for that reason. But it's not. An indie deal is, there's a lot of the time when there's just not going to be as much money on the table to, up front to, you might make a record, for $5,000, $10,000, who knows? Like it could be, it can be a really small deal, but that's kind of, that's a beautiful thing in its own way. But the reason why I bring up an indie deal is just because, what I'm doing, it is an indie deal. Luckily I feel very taken care of. I have no gripes whatsoever about how well I'm being taken care of. We have a very good relationship, and so for now I'm just at home in Asheville, trying to write mostly during the day, kind of taking care of, it's kind of a new thing for me to be doing interviews regularly. It's kind of a new thing for me to be doing sort of call-ins at stations. It's a lot of fun. I'm having fun, just kind of like, on a given day needing to take care of. I think the promotional work I get more enjoyment out of than I've ever had before. And part of that too is that I have some people helping me, like the label definitely is helping me on the promotional end. So that's great.
So what's your daily, I know you said you work in you do the weddings, but what's your daily routine like most days now that you don't have to work as much and stuff?
There's usually something to take care of with social media. I try to work out every day, or I try to run every day. Right now I've been sick for a couple weeks. The past 2 weeks have not been indicative of what my typical schedule is, just because I had a few teeth removed, and it's quite possible I have COVID at this very moment. So I'm just on the way. Yeah, I'm on the way out of some funk. I've been tested and I've been isolating. So, typically my daily, I'm usually just trying to, right now I'm kind of learning the ropes of, the way I put it is I'm in research and development right now. Like on a given day, I might play mostly banjo that day just to get my chops up on banjo. Might play mostly fingerstyle guitar, might play some bass, might mess around in Logic and be working on some of that. Right now I'm kind of, what I'm trying to do is be a little bit more self-sufficient in my pre-production, so that by the next time I go to cut a record, I really know, I have something to point to show people what I want from a song. And so for now I'm trying to with the extra time on my hands and a lot of the existential threat of being a musician is kind of alleviated at the moment. I'm trying to really hone my chops on the recording, and not so much for the purpose of ever really, I could one day put out something I recorded myself, but I don't, at the current time, I don't have that kind of confidence in my ability to record. So for right now, it's just a creative tool to sort of make more convincing demos, because my demo process in the past has been sort of it's been okay, assemble a band, kind of get whatever sound you get out of that, go record at a local rehearsal studio, get the board bounce. That's my demo. Now it's I'd rather really know exactly what I want from the drums. I'd really want to know exactly what I want from the bass. But part of recording too, though, is you can't be, it's good to know what you want. The way I wanted to try to approach some of the songs on this album was I wanted to see what the players came up with from their own natural intuitions, because it might end up actually being better than what I thought I wanted from the song. And so with some of the songs, I just showed them the song acoustically, let them play what they were going to play. And if I liked it more, we would go that way. And I would never, but I'd rather have to redirect them back to what I initially create. I'd rather have to redirect them back on course than tell them what course to take in the first place, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to do that in the future too. I think in the future, I'm going to show demos to the team I'm working with, but only break demos out for people I'm recording with if what we're creating in that moment isn't really up to my liking. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think you made it to the point where you said or I guess we made it to present day because I
So
know I threw
somewhat.
you
I
off
mean,
the timeline a bit because I had a lot of questions, but I was trying to make sure we got the full story out
oh
of it.
yeah, the like we finished the record in December. There's a lot of promotional work ahead of time, and there's a lot of stuff you have to like. There's so much more to like, in the interest of making sure that a record succeeds. It is mind-boggling how much work goes into just like making sure that that record has the platform it needs to sort of like go the distance. And so like in the past, if you had asked me when I was 18, like I would have told you like, oh, the record's done, let's put it out next week, or let's put it out
Yeah.
like a couple weeks from now. These days, there's like at least these days, now that I'm working with other people on a record, the scope of what sort of preemptive promotional work that you have to do, the scope of like just the scale of that is so much bigger than I would have ever guessed. We're getting write-ups from better and better publications on the record, and that's in no small part thanks to Amy and Kendra, who are doing publicity and social media for me now. And so that's, I would say, to anybody who's trying to put out a record on their own, my main advice would be try to find somebody. Anytime you release something, try to find somebody who's going to like have exclusive access to it for a couple days or a day. If you're in Western North Carolina and you're trying to release a new record, go to Mountain Express, say, hey, I'm trying to debut this record. Try to find somebody who can bring attention to what you're doing. Because as I've done many times, I've done a few times, you'll release a record to a fanfare of crickets if you're not really checking your boxes ahead of time to release it. I was blown away. When we finished the record, it was like a minimum of like 2 to 3 months before we were going to be in a position to release it. And I would have never thought that would be the case. But so we put it out in late February. And then since then, it's sort of just been, the songs have been getting on playlists, which is great. I've been doing stuff like this, kind of some Zoom call stuff, and I've been having fun with that. And that kind of leads you to where I'm at right now. Right now it's mid-March, and it's this, nothing left to say. We've put out a music video for it, and I can't say which one right now, but because it's not announced yet. But there's a famous there's a music video group that puts out country music that is going to put out Nothing Left to Say on their equivalent of like You Ought to Know artists or rising artists.
Oh shoot!
Yeah,
I hadn't seen is the video on your Instagram, or I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, if you go on Instagram, if you go to my link tree, it's in the bio.
Okay, I'll find it.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, that's where we're at now, and I feel great. It's all very, excuse me, it's all quite new, and but I just feel every day, counting my blessings. So
yeah, how have you been pleased with how everything's done, and has the label given you feedback and they've Clint, this is doing great, whatever?
Yeah, they've, it's so funny. with this stuff, you don't really know what the marks are. Like, you don't know, at least the first go round, like you don't really know what to expect. But all the feedback I've heard from everybody who's involved on the business end has said, like, we're very pleased. So I'm like, okay, good. Check it out.
Yeah. That's awesome. Man, I miss hearing live music so much, and
Same.
it really didn't hit me at like over the summer and stuff because I was down on I'm at UGA in Athens, but I'm from St. Simon's. Like last summer I was down there, and it was just whatever. But then now that I'm back up here, it's like, man, but yeah, I hope you could come to Athens maybe at some point, play. I'd love to come see you. Maybe we could play together.
Yeah.
You could get in. We could do it in person because I know the Zoom calls are. Very grateful for the opportunity to be able to Zoom because I feel like it's a good way to at least get in touch with people, but nothing like meeting in person.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to meet up with you, man. I'm sure we can play some tunes together. And yeah, I'm eager to get back to Athens. I'm eager to like kind of, I'm ready. I'm a live performance dude for sure. That's my primary thing. And so I'm just eager to get back out there, get the show on the road. And luckily, it looks like things are coming into a booking arrangement. So like I'll be playing, I'll be playing a lot when things resume, and I hope to come down to, or hopefully playing a lot when things resume, and hopefully come down to Athens and try that stuff on for size again.
For sure, man. Yeah, and if you ever need a place to stay in town or whatever, or I'm sure they'll put you up nowadays, but um, yeah, you'd always crash on my couch if you ever need.
Yeah, I'll let you know, man.
For sure. Well, dude, appreciate you doing this. Sorry you have
Yeah,
the
it's fun.
cocoa, but hope you feel
What now?
better. I said sorry you have the cocoa. The
Well,
COVID.
I don't know for sure yet, but it's the symptoms are aligned. I'm waiting on my test results, but I'm going to assume that I have it. But I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, all right, Clint. Yeah, this will probably be out next week or so. But yeah, man, I
Cool.
appreciate it again. Or wait, let me yeah, if there are two more questions. If there was, I like to kind of do these two things. If
Sure.
I like to try and grow this from the point of like the kind of guests I have on. So if there was
Mm-hmm.
someone you could refer, or if anyone you think of, that'd be awesome. And
Yeah.
then, or not, like you don't have to do it now, but just like take, if there's anyone that came to mind, because I was trying to expand this as much as I could. And then B, if you could put anything on a billboard that the whole world would see, what would it say?
Oh. Ooh, that's a good question. Billboard about me?
No, I could literally say whatever you wanted to say.
Uh,
It just is a billboard with like, like say it says like one sentence or two sentences, something like that.
yeah. The one sentence I would include, it's not strictly a Tom Waits lyric. I think he quoted it from like a folk song or a book, but Tom Waits in his song come on up to the house. The lyric is the world is not my home, I'm just passing through. That's something I would put on a billboard in a heartbeat. I really like that sentiment a lot. And yeah, I don't think that's his words exactly. I think he got that from something else. But yeah, I would love to put that on a billboard.
Dude, I like that, man.
Yeah. And I'll text you later about recommendations as to who you could interview for this.
For sure, man. All right. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah,
Congrats on
thanks
everything.
again.
I'm trying to pass it out to all my friends, so I'm gonna
Yeah, I'm sure.
get you that base in Athens.
Yeah, we'll post. I'll post about it when I catch it. And yeah, thanks again.
For sure, man. All right. We'll see you, big man.
See ya.